Well, hello, freedom seekers. As usual, I am really pressed on time tonight, and I wanted to kick this off on time at 8 o'clock. And so I did manage to be here right at 8 o'clock. I'm excited about that. However, it was really pressing me for time to get this going at that point. But I'm excited to be here with you this evening and to continue the series that we've been doing on the power of your words. And so I hope that you're enjoying the series. Now, go ahead and if you like, okay, sorry about that. Looks like there's something going on with the internet connection, and we'll hopefully that this won't end up creating a problem throughout the evening here. But yeah, I don't know what it was like on your end, but from my end, my screen just suddenly went blank. It was just blacked out. And so that's not a good thing, good feeling either. But anyway, we'll just continue right on here. And just kind of the first 5 minutes or so of my live streams that I kind of look to get people on board here and have them, give them time to jump on and join the live stream. And so I just kind of chat a little bit. And this week, last week I enjoyed a glass of wine and haven't had any chocolate for about a week though, and I do love my chocolate, and particularly this chocolate that I made. This is my dark chocolate, 78% pure cacao. And so tonight I'm going to be enjoying some of that. So please indulge me on that. When you have dark chocolate, particularly that's dark chocolate that is 78% cacao, so often it's just really bitter and not tasty at all. But if you use the right beans and then make the chocolate right, it's absolutely delicious. In fact, one of the companies that I really enjoy is a company called Street of Chocolate. You can buy the chocolate on Amazon. And I know the owner of that company, and he and his wife, and they're from the Philippines, and they have their own cacao farm in the Philippines. And then they import the beans here to the United States, and they make their own chocolate. And they make 100% cacao. Nothing but cacao, using their own beans from the Philippines. And I tell you what, that's some of the best 100%. I mean, just super dark chocolate, but it's so good. It only takes a little bit to be really satisfying if you love chocolate like I do. And so this is 78%. That's really good. But anyway, let's get on with the conversation tonight. Sorry about that. Really, I'd forgotten how it's been the last couple of times I've had the chocolate. I've had milk chocolate. Milk chocolate is a little softer than this dark chocolate, and so I'd forgotten how much I really have to chew it before I can just let it digest. And so sorry about having to chew there in front of you. I apologize for that. But anyway, now as I go along here, if you have any comments, questions of any kind, please put them in the comments section there, and I'll be happy to go ahead from time to time. I'll be checking the comments, and I'll be happy then to go ahead and address your comments. But I always enjoy knowing where my viewers are coming from, and so if you don't mind, make a comment and just tell me where you're coming from. What city and state, and if you're outside the United States, then put the country as well, because I do have viewers from all over the world, and I always appreciate your coming and spending some time with me here this evening. But your questions don't have to be just about the topic for tonight, and they can be about anything that you want to ask about anything about ethical and consensual non-monogamy, about my life and my experiences, anything that, you want to ask about making money online. And that's how I got started with, I should have brought some water. I didn't, like I said, I was kind of rushed getting here, but anything that you happen to, want to know about that you think that I might be able to answer or help you with some questions, so feel free to ask your questions. And then if you have any comments or anything you want to share with me, feel free to do that as well. And so we're going to go ahead now and get started with tonight's conversation. And we're going to just start out by reviewing the last 2 weeks. In the last 2 weeks, we've been doing this series, and it'll go about 4, maybe even 5 weeks, but 5 weeks would be the most. We're doing this series, though, about how your words are really powerful, and they can help you to create the life that you desire. And I started out talking about that we have an ocean of abundance out there. That ocean of abundance can be an abundant, should be. It should not just be one thing, like, having an abundance of mashed potatoes. I love mashed potatoes. Having an abundance of mashed potatoes, well, that's not the only thing I ever want to always eat. And so you want to have an ocean of abundance that also is got some balance to it. And so I like to focus on your ocean of abundance that's abundant with sex and relationships that you desire. And these are the sex and relationships that you desire, not what, I might desire for my life, but you get to define and determine this. And the same thing with the work and the wealth. Now, with work, I think less work, in other words, spending less hours working, is more. And when you start to really learn how to generate some money for yourself, you can then start to learn how less is more. And then, and that's really about work and abundance of wealth. Actually be able to create wealth for yourself. I'm going to launch some things next year. I'm really excited, not next year, the end of this year. Here we are in new year now. So at the end of this year, I'm going to be launching some things that I'm really excited about to help people who are already sexually liberated, living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, help them to live a financially abundant life that is financially liberated, and they can help them to be able to create some wealth. And so I'm really excited about that. And that goes along with the things that I've been doing now. Here we are, week 33. And in these weeks, I come here and I start out because I am transitioning my life right now, transitioning from, being like probably many of you, where I just trade my time for money. And got to a place where I just no longer want to trade my time for money, but I want to make some real money. I've made really some pretty decent money in years in the past. An average month was about $40,000 a month, and so that's not too bad for a month's work. But that wasn't wealth, and it certainly was not where it was more of a passive type income, and that was not sustainable, and it was not ongoing. And I was trading my time for dollars. And as long as I kept trading my time for dollars, then I kept being able to make a lot of money. But even at that, working 80 to 100 hours a week to make that kind of money just really was not sustainable. I did it for 15 years. But after 15 years, it gets to be not something that you want to just keep going the rest of your life and doing in order to be making that kind of money. And so when I talk about then wealth and developing that is to create an income online where, there's things that you can use, and not necessarily, I'm not going to be talking about you doing what I'm doing, but I'm going to be providing a system for you where, you can choose your own path. And there's just great opportunities out there right now on the internet. And so I'm excited to see how that goes by the end of the year. But then also your health and wellness is another part of your sea of abundance, your work and your wealth, and then your health and your wellness. Because without your health, as we're learning in COVID, I've got quite a few friends that nobody that I really personally know. This is like serious, and I've got many friends though that have had COVID, And we understand how fragile sometimes our health is. And so there are things that you can do to build better health in your body. And so that's part of your abundant ocean as well. And so let me just go ahead then and talk about then you're reviewing what we've gone over the last couple of weeks. And the idea is that you can use your words to create the life that you desire, and you can have more satisfaction and pleasure. In fact, what I really focus on doing for myself is to maximize my satisfaction and pleasure, not just to have, more satisfaction and pleasure, but to maximize my satisfaction and pleasure in my work and wealth, and in my health and wellness, and in my sex and relationships. Or you can use your words to create displeasure in your life and dissatisfaction in your life. Or you can use your words just to kind of be neutral and get on through life, But why not use your words in order to just maximize your satisfaction and pleasure? And that's where I'm going here with this, and helping you utilize your words so that you can have more satisfaction and pleasure. We talked about that in order to do that, you really need to be a progressive person. And that was in week 1. And so if you didn't get that information, please go back and take a look at what we said about being a progressive person. That's somebody that's got to invite newness and change in their life. You have to be clear and specific, about where you're going. And then the question comes down to, how long does it take to begin to use the power of your words in such a way so that you can create and have the life that you love the most, taking you to your abundant ocean that's full of satisfaction and pleasure in sex and relationships, work and wealth, and health and wellness? And so that was the question that we ended up finishing with in week 1. And then last week, week 2, went into answering that question, and then said that there are 5 parts to answering that question. You need the first 4 parts in order to start experiencing that, where you can be, enjoying your abundant ocean. And so then the 5th part just helps you to maintain that and keep it going. And so we went through then last week the first 3 parts, and I did take and give you a quick overview of all 5, and I'll do that overview here again. But and then we're going to get on to part 4 and part 5. We'll finish up with that today then. And so part 1 I did this in talking about an analogy. An analogy, and I used an analogy of a river that you've got to go and get on a boat in a river and flow to this abundant ocean. But then I said that there's many different oceans out there. What is an abundant ocean for one person isn't necessarily the same abundant ocean for you. And so it's not a matter of just getting in any river because they all go to the same ocean. You may end up in an ocean that you don't like. Talked about that last week, and my liking for oysters and my partner's disliking for oysters. And so there are a lot of oceans out there. You want to make sure that you get in the boat that's on the river that's going to take you to your abundant ocean. But then, of course, then as I mentioned last week, as you're driving around trying to find that river, and, it helps to have a magnetic guidance system with a built-in GPS. That's part 2. Part 1 is getting to the river. Part 1 is to understand that there's a river and then part 2 is to use your guidance, helping you to develop and learn to use your guidance system, taking you to the river, which has the structure needed, taking you to the abundant ocean. You see, because I used the example of a GPS for hiking that I bought years ago, and it's never been used. because I did not invest in training in how to even download the maps onto it. So I go out hiking in the backwoods and not worry about getting lost and things of that nature. And so that it just never got used. An expensive GPS, but because I was too cheap to make the additional investment into the coaching, the teaching, and the maps and stuff like that I needed in order to be able to utilize it. And so it's gone unused. So that was part 3. And then part 4 we're going to get into tonight, and that's getting into trusting and staying in what's called a flow state. And then part 5 we'll finish up with tonight, reaching your abundant ocean, following the 3 parts process of reframing, transforming, and liberating. And so continuing on with part 4, the idea then that you want to take, and we left off in part 3, is the idea of having a coach. Is like you're in your car and you're out there looking for that river that's going to take and flow to your ocean. But what river is going to take you to your ocean? And so if you have a guidance system and a GPS and a coach and the things that you need that are riding there along with you in your car, they can direct you to the river that you want to get in a boat and then flow down to the ocean that is your abundant ocean. And so it's helpful to have someone that is there, you might say somebody who's got your back. And we live as part of, we're social beings. And so it's good to build a community for those kinds of things. And then to have some coaching and teaching along the way as well. And so as far as then getting into and trusting and staying in a flow state, you see a flow state now is, imagine then that there you are, you found your river. The river that you've been, your coach took you to the river that you've been looking forward to getting to, because it's going to take you to the abundant ocean that has all that you desire in your life. And so there you are, you're at the banks of that river, and there's a boat you're getting into. And the river itself, it's beautiful. It's calm, it's serene. Now in Washington State, I haven't had the opportunity to do this in California yet, but something I want to do in Washington State. I've gone, floating on the rivers in Washington State, and that's just where it's called tubing. And you get in an inner tube and you spend an afternoon just floating down this river, and it's just peaceful and beautiful. But with the river that goes to your ocean, though, once you get into that boat, it's your decision to make whether you keep your coach or you let your coach go. But you see, there are some unknowns on that river. Will you stay in a flow state? And that is that state where you're just like where I've experienced, you're just floating on that river, and it's just gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's calm. It's serene. Well, but you don't know if the river is going to stay that way. And so will you stay in flow state and making it to your abundant ocean? Or will you crash and burn along the way if you get some turbulent times and some rough waters? Will you survive the obstacles that are going to be, maybe trees in the river, maybe boulders in the river, maybe other boats in the river, all kinds of different obstacles along the way, but there's going to be obstacles. And then the turbulence, what if there's a waterfall? Can you manage these things on your own? And so that's where, it's your call as to whether you take your coach that got you to that river and you take the coach with you or not. When the river splits into different directions, it's way easy to head off down the wrong part of the river. When the river splits and you go like, what do I do now? And you decide to go down one way, and in my case, go down the wrong river, and you can end up wasting years of your life. I've experienced that. I've been there. I didn't know these things about the power of my words and about having my magnetic energy that I talked about last week and having this internal GPS system. You know, I didn't know any of those things when I started out on all this journey of mine. You know, I'm 63 years old. And so at this point in my life, you know, and the exciting thing is I last week, in fact, I was listening to some reports about, you know, the research that's being done on longevity, because I fully believe I'm going to be healthy and live until I'm 120 years old. And people sometimes when they hear me say that, it's like, are you nuts? You know, and I've heard other people say, oh, I would never want to live that long. What do you want to live through this year and into next year? Why? You know, because you have things that you look forward to. And the reason that people think that they don't want to live past 90, 100, 110, 120 years old is because they think like what they have seen other people, you know, they don't want to get to be decrepit and you know, crippled and have terrible health, and they're not having satisfaction and pleasure at all, but they're suffering, and nobody wants that. But yet, if you could live a life that is healthy and active, mentally and physically, you're strong, and sexually you're active and having a great time, and you could do that right up until you're 120 years old, why wouldn't you want to live until you're 120 years old? And I believe that I have the ability to do that. And I was listening to some things last week that said that people that are in their 20s today, that are 20, 30 years old today, they likely will have a shot at living until they're 200 years old. Imagine that, you know, and being healthy and active and, you know, having sex, lots of sex until they're 200 years old. But you see, it all starts with you taking care of this body of ours. And if you don't take good care of it, then it's going to chip away, you know. And in fact, Kat and I were talking today about the COVID vaccines that are coming out, you know, and we're just personally, you know, you have to make your own decision on this, but we're not going to be getting vaccinated. And because these vaccines are things that we're putting into our bodies, and there's very unproven. How many people every year die of medications? In fact, that is the number one killer, I believe, in America, is people dying from their medications, from side effects and overdoses and the wrong medications and all kinds of things. And they die because the pharmaceutical companies teach the doctors that they got to use this stuff. And I believe that there's a better way. And that's why we talk about liberating your life. Liberating your life sexually by having more sex with more people more often. Liberating your life financially by having more money that gives you more time to enjoy more of your life. Liberating yourself with your health. And a good example of that is when I met Kat. And when I met Kat, she was on prescription medications. She really was kind of just following the path that you know, most people follow. And those prescription medications, they don't kill you right away. Just like if I started to smoke a pack of cigarettes, you know, a pack of cigarettes a day, it's likely that they wouldn't kill me in 10 years. And possibly even 20 years. But it's the slow chipping away of the damage that those cigarettes will do to my body, which ends up killing me. And it may not end up totally killing me, but it's not going to help me to enjoy more satisfaction and more pleasure in my life. And that's why I'm not a fan of 420, you know, pot. You know, a lot of people are into it right now, you know, and that's their, you know, I respect their ability to do that, but it's not me. Now, I think that marijuana, you know, I think it has wonderful medicinal uses that are truly very specific medicinal uses. But, you know, most people, even those people who are trying to use it as a medicinal use, they're really abusing it. And so, it's like I met these gals one night. I was out at a bar, and 3 gals, young gals in their 20s, and they all daily smoke pot. And they said things like, well, it's for my social anxiety. It's the only way I can really cope and get through the day, and that's typical to how oftentimes we learn to live our lives. But I've just learned better methods, and the power of your words is one of the methods that you can utilize so that you can take and live without those things and still live a life that is not only every bit as good in satisfaction and pleasure in your life, but it gives you more satisfaction and pleasure than you can ever have from any of the drugs. Because it gives you sustainable satisfaction and pleasure that's long-term, ongoing, and it's for you to enjoy for your life, all of your life. And so, that's why then that learning how, as we're teaching you in this series, learning how to use your words to have the power to create the life that you love the most, that is something that I wish I had learned many years ago. And I hope that you're learning these things from me now. But you see, one of the obstacles on that river is getting cheap, just being cheap. And being cheap is a way that will guarantee that you'll remain in the land of scarcity. Instead of getting to your abundant ocean, being cheap will keep you in the land of scarcity. It doesn't really save you money. It keeps you from the abundance that's waiting for you. And like I explained last week, I grew up around being cheap, and I didn't really look at myself. In fact, at times I thought I was generous. But in reality, it was my behaviors that, it just, it was one of those things that just chipped away at my life, that I took and did things and made decisions on the cheap, and there was this thing about, well, I can do that. I'll do it myself instead of paying to have it done, things of that nature. And so I've learned that being cheap is the guarantee that I will remain in the land of scarcity. It's not going to take you to your abundant ocean. And so the power of your words will either help you to have more satisfaction and pleasure in creating the life that you love the most, or it'll help you have less satisfaction and pleasure, or it'll just keep you neutral, where it's like you don't go anywhere in life from year after year after year. And so you just look forward to the good times that you can have out of life. And so that part 4 then of our analogy is getting into trusting and staying in the state of flow. And the biggest key and the biggest factor of that is to have a coach, I've learned. In fact, today is the first work day in January, the new year. And this is the first week that I'm starting working with a new coach. And this new coach is the most expensive coach the most money I have ever paid for coaching before. I'm paying $1,000 a week for coaching, and, but when I think about it, what's like, I love my Seahawks football team, and I was able to listen in on the game yesterday a little bit. And those people, those football players, they know the value of a good coach, and those coaches don't come cheap. And if you're like, I like to use the idea of baseball, in fact, because oftentimes kids will start out in Pee Wee League, and then they go to Little League, and it's all about the coaching that happens there and the things that they learn along the way from their coaches. Not only just about baseball, but they learn a lot about life from their coaches. And it's those coaches that keep them progressing. And it's a coach that can help to encourage them and see in them talents that they can't see in themselves. And so, yeah, I never really had any talent for baseball, but I have talents, and you have talents as well. And so getting into this state of flow oftentimes requires having a coach, because coaches can see things in you that you can't see in yourself, both the good things and bad things. And that's really a critical part of a good coach, is that they will see and they'll tell you the good and the bad, and they'll help to guide your life to bring out the best in you. And so that's how then people end up going to college and being a football player, a baseball player, a basketball player, a tennis player, all the different sports, or going to college and being on the debate team, and just all the different kinds of skills and the things that people can excel in. But it's usually through coaching. And in college, we have professors that believe in you and say, you really have a talent here for this. And if you're into art or music and things like that, that takes lots of coaching as well. Now, I don't know if you went to college or not. I went to college and got myself a couple degrees, and did not have the good fortune of having parents or any family members that could afford to help me get through college. I had to put myself through college, and this is quite a few years ago. But my college education, cost me about $70,000, which today that would be inexpensive, But it cost me about $70,000, and that was for a 5-year college education. That $70,000 was an investment. And when I came out of college, do you think that right away, the first year, I made $70,000? No. The first year out of college, in fact, it was during an economic downturn, and the jobs were hard to come by and all that kind of stuff. I think I made about $20,000, out of college. Fact is, I made more money when I was in college because I had multiple jobs and I had a business that I started building and stuff. And I made more money when I was in college because I gave up my business when I went to work and got a job. But I made more money when I was in college than I did my first year working in a job. And then after about 2 years of that, then I decided to start my own business. And that's where I really learned that you start to take charge of your own life and start to take charge of your own income and financial ability. But then, like I said, I just was working hard because that's what I was taught to do, work hard. And I was trading time for dollars. And so it's where I come here then and teaching you these things about the power of your words, because I don't want you to go down that same river that I went down. I want you to go down a river that you get into this state of flow where it's just this beautiful, lovely trip. And it takes you to your abundant ocean. And that's what the power of your words can do. And next week, we'll be getting into, how to take and apply the power of your words and things that I've been going through this series about. And I'll be getting into then how to apply all that to actually then be able to create the life that you love the most. So part 5 then is reaching your abundant ocean, following a 3-part process of reframing, transforming, and liberating. And so for me, my abundant ocean, and this whole turnaround in my life started when I was about 49 years old, because I turned my sex life around. Sex is the most powerful transformative force in your life. And if you allow it to be, it does, sex may be not a transformative force at all, but for me, many people find that it can be for them. You see people who suddenly they want to have sex and they clean up their act in many different ways. They have kids as a result of sex and they clean up their act in many different ways. Of course, there are the people who don't do that. And so, but that's where it comes down to your choice. It can be the most powerful transformative force in your life, you can just stay stuck with it, or it can be a really terrible thing, because to be 49 years old, event happened in my life. It was a transformative event. And so in order for that to take place, and just what I'm hoping you're working towards and going through now in whatever transitions that you're working on in your life, whether it be to have more sex with more people more often, or to have more money or more health, whatever it is that you really need to pull together in your life in order to have the life that you love the most. So there's this 3-part process that is reframing. So for me, because I came from having, as an adult, not as a kid, I didn't go to church as a kid, but when I was a teenager, I followed some girls in a church and started going to church, and then became saved and born again and all those kinds of things. And so for me, then, to get to that point where I was 49 years old, I had to do some reframing. And reframing is where I had to start to take in new information. Because if your life is stuck, if you just keep doing the same thing, even if you're stuck in a good place, but is that where you want to spend the rest of your life? Because most likely it's not going to stay stuck for the rest of your life. It's going to slowly go downhill. It's what happens for most people. But even if right now you're stuck at a good place, for me, I gained a little bit of weight every single year. Have you got on the scales yet this January or the end of December and compared your weight now with a year ago? How about it? Have you gained weight? Just a little bit of weight gain year after year after year. For me, what that meant is I went from 145 pounds when I got married to weighing 265 pounds before I said, whoa, it's time to bring this to a stop. And, I didn't bring it to a stop until after I started having sex with more women in my life. Because it was at that point that I didn't want to just have sex with large women who were heavyset like me. I wanted to have sex with all women, and so in order for that to happen, I needed to have a body that would at least be somewhat attractive to all women. And so that's when I then turned started turning my health around, and realizing that I needed to change my eating and changing my activities. And that took some reframing. I started watching documentaries, and a good documentary to start out with would be what I started out years ago was a documentary called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead by Joe Cross. And after watching that, then and it's about juicing, and I went and started to juice. And I don't juice any longer very regularly. And once in a while I do, but I don't very regularly do it. But I did a 30-day juice fast where I had nothing but this green juice for 30 days. And that really helped us to kind of, it's called a reboot my health. And that's what I had done. And there's a lot of other good documentaries out there. And that's kind of where it started for me, though, was with that Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead documentary that Joe Cross had made, and about his own life, his own experience. And so that was revolutionary for me. And so, that was part of the reframing process. I had to reframe my life, where I had changed a lot of the things in my head to be able to liberate myself sexually. And I got to a place there that I was enjoying having more sex with more people more often, and really having a good time with that. But then I knew that it came the next thing in my life, and that was taking care of my health. And so I had to reframe myself, and that's taking in new information. Information that a lot of people think is kind of not following the line, I mean, the doctors. And when I was in Seattle, I'm in Ventura now, but when I was in Seattle a couple weeks ago, I went to the dentist, and things that they said to me that I needed to do, is like, I said, well, how about if instead I've got one tooth that I've got a receding gum, and it's, I guess, 7 millimeters receded or something like that. And they said, well, bacteria is going to get up in there and it's going to impact your health and all this kind of stuff. And you see, I've been hearing this stuff about these receding gum lines for the past 25 or 30 years of my life. But I don't, and not as good as I should be on it, but I do a thing called oil pulling. And oil pulling can rebuild your gum lines. And the reason I even went to the dentist is because the week of Thanksgiving, on that Monday of Thanksgiving week, I had this killer toothache. And I couldn't eat. I went 3 days without really eating much solid food. It was just a little bit of soft food because it's just killing me, this toothache. But you see, I had that experience 5 years ago on a Friday night. I couldn't get into the dentist until Monday. And so I looked up online what I could do, and I learned about oil pulling. And by the time Monday came along, because I oil pulled all weekend long because it was a killer toothache. And I oil pulled all weekend long. And so I learned about oil pulling. And by the time Monday came along, I decided, hey, it's gotten so much better, I'm going to just keep oil pulling and see if I even need to go to the dentist. And I never ended up needing to go to the dentist. Oil pulling took care of killed the infection. I used essential oils with oil pulling. And so it took care of my infection. And then finally, when I ended up going to the dentist a couple of years later, the dentist is like, yeah, it's whatever you did, it took care of it. And so the thing is that dentists are taught by dental schools how to build profitable dental practices. And that means they need to have you keep coming back to them, need to have you keep coming back to them. So they don't want to learn. They don't want to know what is going to actually help you to be healthy. They just want you to know what's going to help you to keep coming back and seeing them. And so that's where I've learned that sometimes it helps to do some of your own research. And so when I became non-monogamous, then I reframed my thinking. I was, in order to have a more satisfaction and more pleasure with my sex life, I had to reframe my thinking. And then I had to transform my relationship and my sex life. And then the liberation came. And that was 13 years ago. And then after that, then I realized that, okay, now I need to deal with my health. And so I took charge of my health and I turned it around. And no, I'm not in perfect health today. I'm not in perfect weight, but I tell you what, at the age of 63, I'm doing really good compared to, what most people are out there my age. I'm doing really good, not on a single prescription medication. And Kat, she was on 3 prescription medications when we met 7 years ago, and now she's not on any. And she's lost weight and is, people think she looks hot because she is hot. And so it helps to start to reframe for your health and wellness. And now then is my journey I'm on is to reframe my life financially. And these are the things then that towards the end of this year that I'm going to come out with some programs, because, I want hundreds of people from around the U.S. to be able to take and have fun with me and travel with me and go places and do things, and for us to have our wonderful, ethical, and consensual non-monogamous life to enjoy together. And so that's where I'm a little selfish about this, that I want people to join me in, you know, for me to take and have all this liberation in my life and only have a few people that share in that liberation. I want an abundance. That's what we're talking about, having this abundant ocean. Not just a few people to share with you in this ocean. If we're having more sex, you know, yeah, I'm going to have more sex with one or two more people the rest of my life, you know. No, that's not what I want. If that's what you want, then that's fine. But for me, I want more sex with more people more often. And throughout the course of the next 10 years alone of my life, you know, I probably want to have sex with maybe 50 more people over the next 10 years. What do you want? What's that look like for you? And the power of your words can help you to get there. And so this three-part process, reframing, transforming, and liberating. Now, first part of then creating this life is to have the right structure. You need to create a structure. Last week I mentioned about a little bit about structure and talked about how, you know, it's like, imagine the riverbanks. And the banks provide the structure for the water to be able to stay within and flow down. And there are structures in all of our lives that help us in the same way so that we can stay in the place of flow. And we talk a lot more about that through our coaching programs and what I can get into here. And it just so happens we do have next week, Kat and I, on Wednesday of next week, we're kicking off a 16-week coaching program. And so if you want to know more about that, please make sure you get in touch with me. There are links and stuff down there in the description. And so make sure you get in touch with me to learn more about, find out more about that. But so yeah, we're starting kicking off a 16-week coaching program to go into details about how you can live an easy and liberated and fun life. And this three-part process is a big part of what we're going to be coaching on. That is transforming and liberating your life, and how you can then create and have the right structure. Now, what's the right structure for me is not the same structure that you would want to have for your life, because our lives are probably we want different things. You know, you probably want a little bit different ocean than I do. Maybe not, though. Maybe you just think like, yeah, I want everything Mark wants, you know. And if you do, then yes, just keep coming along and jump in my boat with me, you know. And I'd love to have you aboard. Now, along the way, though, you're going to experience some resistance. You see, because I'm going to just use my hands to show an example of this. So here's where you're at right now. This spot, this, you know, imagine just this would be a place on a map, for instance. You know, this is where you're at right now. This is your GPS we're talking about, you know, GPS system. Now, what you want, though, your desires are to be here. And how to get from here to here, what happens along the way, as you start to pull away from where you currently are, it's like there's a bungee cord that keeps wanting to pull you back. This is what we call resistance. And it'll keep trying to pull you back to where you were and not allow you to get where you want to be. And so what we do is we create tension here. This part of magnetic energy. We create this magnetic tension that's going to pull you here. And then we teach you how to get rid of the resistance in your life and letting go here. And it's interesting, when Kat and I moved here to Ventura 4 years ago, and she was just starting to learn these things from me at that time. And not only from me, but we had other coaches, we had other, you know, people that we tapped into and got coaching from as well back 4 years ago on a lot of this. And you know, she had this idea, you know, that she just wanted to live in, I'll just call it La La Land, you know, and it was just this place where there'd never be any resistance. But you see, if you're living a progressive life, like we talked about on week 1, you're always going to need resistance. It's the resistance that helps our lives to take and have new form that's created from them. And so you need that resistance. But when we moved here to California 4 years ago, it's like Kat didn't want to acknowledge any resistance in her life. She just wanted to try to live in this place of la la land. And I kept trying to explain to her that the resistance is good, because she saw resistance as being bad. And this, again, is the power of your words. If you see and you talk of resistance in your life being bad, it's going to be bad. But allow your words to take you the resistance that you have and make it good. And so, I kept working with Kat, and sure enough, by the time a year had gone by, she started to realize that, yes, resistance is an important part of our own growth. And how we get to here, the resistance is an important part of it. And so in order to get here, it's important to create that tension and the structure. When I built my house, I've only built one home in my life, one house. But when I built my house about 40 years ago now, I ordered trusses for the roof, and I put all the trusses up, and I put the plywood on them, and then the building inspector came out, and he took a look at it, and he says, "You need to create some tension on those trusses." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "Well, if a big wind comes along, you have the plywood nailed down to them and all of that. But if a big wind comes along and pushes from one direction, those trusses are going to start to lean like that, and the plywood will just come right off of them, and your whole roof will come off. And you need to have some tension, which then keeps those trusses strong and together." And he explained it to me, and he drew it out on a piece of paper for me. And since I wasn't a builder or anything, I'm just a homeowner building my own home. And so he was kind enough to explain to me how the tension works in creating tension on those trusses so that they stay strong. And so that's what we need to do in creating in our own life, is we create a structure in our life with tension. Then that tension holds the structure together. And that structure then, like I talked about, the banks of the river, keeps us flowing and pulling us along in the direction towards our abundant ocean. But along the way, what happens, because like I said, there's where you're at right now, and then where you want to go. And so you create this tension to pull you here, but then there's the resistance that keeps wanting to pull you back here. And you learn along the way to let go of that resistance. And getting to your abundant ocean is more about what you have to let go of in your life than it is about things that you must do. And so you start to learn to let go of things in your life that keeps you in this state of flow. Instead of thinking, well, I just got to, learn what I need to do. It's more often what you need to let go of. And, like sometimes we have things that come along in our life and where we just need to let go of it. But we hold on to it so tightly. In Seattle, it took me 3 years to let go of stuff that I accumulated for all of my life. But it came down to a timeline where I just had to finally let go of a lot of stuff that I was attached to. Stuff that I had accumulated where I hadn't even seen some of it for 20 years, stored in boxes in the shed that I had in my backyard and in my various places in my home. I mean, I had things stored all over the place. They weren't serving my life anymore. They were weighing me down. And when I let go of all that stuff, man, the sense of freedom and how I was liberated from just having all this stuff in my life. It was such an amazing feeling. And so along the way that you'll learn and become more of what you want to be along the way so that you can stay in this place of flow by letting go of the resistance, learning to let go of things, and then having that tension that's just going to magnetically pull you down that river to your abundant ocean. But as you are going down this journey, though, what I found, and I just, it's like, whoa, yeah, when I want this so bad, I want this so much, and we find, though, that it's really not, your abundant ocean really doesn't matter that much. I mean, instead, it's more about the person that you become in the process of getting there. You will become a much different person in the process. I am today a totally different person as non-monogamous Mark than I was as religious Mark. I am today a totally different person as trying to transition my income to a digital lifestyle than when I made $30, $40, $50, $60,000 a month and having to work 80 to 100 hours a month. I'm a totally different person today. And so it's more, you'll find that as you get into the state of flow and you've got the magnetic energy that creates the tension that pull you towards where you want, you let go of the resistance that's holding you back to here. You'll find along the way, you find that it's about who you become. Is not about what's waiting here for you in your abundant ocean. It's really all about who you become along the way. And you'll create a life that you love the most daily. It's not where, it's just once in a while I go and have a great time, but it's every day when you get up, it's going to be the best day of your life. Because it's the only day that you're going to have to live is that day. Tomorrow's not a promise. And so you start to live in a life differently. This is part of the reframing process that we take you through with our coaching. We help you to reframe these things so that you start to understand that every day, you don't want to sacrifice for tomorrow. That's how I was taught. Work hard and sacrifice, and you'll make something of yourself, And I worked hard and sacrificed all my life. In fact, I sacrificed my health and was really going in the wrong direction. And I had to turn all that around. You can turn it around too. So it doesn't matter about the events that are going on around you, COVID or, unemployment and bankruptcy and all these kinds of things, bad health, frustration sexually because I wasn't happy with my sex life. None of that matters because it really is about your daily life, making every day of your life count. And so then you find that there will be events that come along, and some events then, in the events themselves, they're neutral. Like COVID. Last week, I heard about, oh my God, it's just so good to be done with this year. Like as if it was a terrible year. I'm sorry for those who had a terrible year. I had a great year, and many people I know had a great year. And you can take any event and turn it into something great instead of something bad. Because we got a little formula, and it goes like this: event plus your response equals the outcome. So there's two parts to that outcome: the event and your response. You may not be able to do anything about the event, but you can do about your response. And this is where the power of your words come in to play. It's the power of your words that'll create and take that event and have an outcome that is positive or negative. Are your words going to be positive or negative? Are your feelings going to be positive or negative? Are your thoughts going to be positive or negative? And it's your words that can turn your thoughts and your feelings around. That's the power of your words. I could be talking about here because it really takes all three of those things. You've heard me talk about a lot on previous videos about your personal energy, which is your thoughts, your feelings, and your words. All three of those elements are part of your personal energy. And the most powerful one of those three elements are your words, because it's your words that can turn your thoughts around. And that's the reframing process. I went through that and I continue. That's part of the growing in life. It's the journey. I continue to reframe my thinking all the time. And so you reframe, taking in thoughts that are going to serve you. And so then you change those thoughts. And it was my words that I said to myself, whether it be the words that you speak, whether it be words that you write, or whether it be words that you say to yourself. And I started saying to the words, I do not want to live my life in sexual frustration for the rest of my life. I was in my mid-40s when I started to realize that and wake up to that. And it's like, no, this is not what I want for the rest of my life. And so I knew that I needed to make some changes. And I started with reframing and then transforming and then liberating my life so that I could have more sex with more people more often and have an abundant ocean when it comes to my sex life. And then that brought me to the realization about my health and brought me to the realization about my income as well. And so it was one step at a time. But, it's been 13 years and just one step at a time, I keep building and creating. Life that is just but I couldn't control my wife, and so we had worked on our sex life for 25 years and it didn't seem to work out very well. I couldn't do anything a lot about that event, and my response to it, my response for many years was work hard. Find out how to fix this problem. When you focus on fixing problems and problem solving, because that's where you put your energy then, is fixing those problems. What happens is that you find that, another thing I teach, where your energy flows, your reality goes. And so you focus on fixing the problems and you just get more problems, because whatever you focus your energy on is going to grow and you're going to get more of in your life. And for me then, it's more problems. Now, it happened in not only my sex life with my wife, it happened in my business, and it just like took more work and harder work and more problems all the time. And so this is where, again, you take the event. At that time, 13, 15, 16 years ago, it's just like, okay, sex is not what I want it to be. So then got to start to change your words so that you can start doing some reforming, transforming, and liberating. And so that was then my response started to go, instead of like, okay, we got to fix this, to saying, well, wait a minute, what is it that I want? What I want is I want to enjoy an abundance of lovely, wonderful sex. And if I can't get there with my wife, then I'm willing to get there with someone else. And so my response was my words I said to myself, and that created an outcome that was a positive outcome then, because I had positive input that I put into my own life. I wasn't going to go out cheating on my wife and be dishonest. And then, I get people contact me regularly, men and women contact me regularly. They felt that was the only option they had. But no, use the power of your words to turn your life around. And that is the power of your words, is so you can create the life that you love the most. And so that's what our 16-week program that we're starting next week is about. And if you want to learn more about that, then be sure to get in touch with me. But then next week, I'm going to be going into how to really apply the things that I've been talking about and teaching here this last 3 weeks, and how to apply this all to your life to be able to actually create the life that you want so you can reach your abundant ocean. But that about does it for tonight. And so I've gone a little too long. I'm going to go ahead. I always try to take and do my weekly update report and at least let you know kind of where I'm at. And put out a video today. You might have seen it. It was about on-the-job training, and put it on the channel and on-the-job training. And it's like, well, that's where I feel like I am right now. Finally, I feel like that in the last several years where I've been working on learning things about creating this new life financially for myself, and I've been learning about it. But now, and so like going from the classroom to starting the job, and that first day on the job was today. And it's like, yes. That when I got out of college, I didn't go to my first job and saying, okay, I'm ready to run this place. I know everything that needs to be known, and I'm ready to run this place. I had to do some on-the-job training, and so that's where I find myself now, is at the place of doing this on-the-job training. And so let's go over here and just share my screen like I do every week, and talking about the weekly video wrap-up report. Okay. And so we always want to put the focus on, again, we end the focus of where I'm at, but I want to put the focus on where you're at, and that is that helping you to have more sex with more people more often. And you do that by creating a magnetic elf life that is easy, liberated, and fun. And I put a stress on that and emphasize that because, you see, I have now in my 13 years, and I've become a leader in the non-monogamous community. I've done that through many different avenues and doing many different things, from holding discussion groups to start having events and starting events, and many different things that I've done over the last 13 years. But I have found then that there's a lot of people that live an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, but they just drag with them. They don't create a new life like I've done. I use that as a turning point in my life. But they just take and drag with them all this stuff. And so this is where I want to help you to create a magnetic elf life that's easy, liberated, and fun. Because so many people don't live a life that may be non-monogamous, but it's not easy. Maybe non-monogamous, it's not often fun. And then maybe non-monogamous, but certainly is not liberated with their health, liberated with their finances. And so we want to take you down that path to creating a magnetic elf life that'll give you more satisfaction and more pleasure. And like I've mentioned before, sure, there's things you can go and you could do that give you more satisfaction and pleasure that would be in one area, like I could go out and get high or get drunk or something, but that's not going to work in all three areas of my life. The three areas of my life being my sex and relationships being one area, and my work and my wealth being a second area, and my health and wellness being a third area. You need to have some things that are going to bring you more satisfaction and pleasure in all three of those areas, not just one or even two of them, but all three of them. And so that's really what I want to help you to create in creating this magnetic elf life. Now let's go ahead and just really quickly wrap up then with moving on to the weekly report. I didn't get all this updated, but let me just go down here to where my own report card is. There we go, my 3 things. And so for last week, my 3 personal things were replacing the headlight on my car. I got that done. Driving to Ventura. I am in Ventura now. I drove from Seattle to Ventura. And so here I am. I was here for New Year's and enjoy New Year's then here. And third is to be able to unpack completely. And no, I didn't even really get the unpacking process started until today, but I went ahead and did start that today, but that'll go on for this week's. goals. And so then business-wise, starting this program called Ad Outreach. And that's a program where I'm learning all about YouTube ads. And that's the program where I'm paying $1,000 a week for a coach to help me to learn exactly what I need to learn and know. And it's a 15-week program. And so I'm very excited about that. And that program, I kicked it off today. And it's just, I mean, this particular coach has got a reputation that is unfounded. You know, the difference is like, yeah, if you have the ability to go to Harvard instead of going to, I went to University of Washington School of Business. And so instead of going to the University of Washington School of Business, if I had the opportunity to go to Harvard instead, why would I not go to Harvard? You know, and so that's where I have the opportunity to hire this guy for 15 weeks. And his team, it's not just him, but it comes with a whole team of people that are helping me to learn and do everything that I need to do to be able to create advertisements on YouTube. And one of the things that we want to do, I mean, that's going to help to create and get to my financial goals. But then beyond that, through my nonprofit organization called Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, you know, it's going to help us to be able to reach out to non-monogamous people and create, like this next week, this coaching program, 6-week coaching program. It is being put on by the ELF Academy, Easy, Liberated, and Fun Academy. And that's an academy, an online academy that we have started, Kat and I have started. And that academy then is a branch, it's a program that we've put together through Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, because we really want to be able to tap in and help people to live non-monogamous lives that are easy, liberated, and free. And so we really, this YouTube advertising is going to help me to be able to tap into audiences and to grow our audience for that. You know, there's 12 to 15 million people in the United States living ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. Most of them are living it in the closet, but YouTube knows where they're at, and I can go ahead and learn how to tap and start to develop relationships with these people through the use of YouTube and YouTube ads. And so I did start the ad outreach program. Another thing I had on here is bookkeeping, and I did some bookkeeping last week, but you know, not with driving to Seattle, and I got the bookkeeping done that I had planned to do. I always like to do a little more, but you know, so like I've said before, it'll probably take me to the end of January to be able to get that bookkeeping totally done. And YouTube program to drive traffic. That's the ad outreach. Well, I didn't realize I had duplicated that. But so anyway, I passed on all of those. I give myself, every week I give myself a pass or fail, and I give myself a pass on the business objectives I had last week. And then going on to this week, ran out of time before getting on to make this video to list out my personal goals for this week, other than to finish unpacking. But so I just have the one, but I'll go ahead and make sure I list out 2 more, so I have that to focus on. But the business-wise is I've created a new work routine for myself. And as I was mentioning to Kat today, I really haven't had a work routine like this for 20 years, because for the most part, I resist routines. And so I'm really excited about this routine that I've set up for myself now, and created a new work routine. And so I really want to take and stick with that, and for the next couple of weeks, so it gets built in as a work habit that's just routine for me. And so I'm very excited about that, and started that today. And so that is where one of my goals is to just really stick to that work routine. Another goal is to build a landing page. I hope to have a little time tonight to tell you about that, but I'm not going to go into the detail, because it's just not enough time. I've already gone 14 minutes over. And then the last time goal for this week is to optimize my new YouTube channel. I'm not the things that I'm doing on creating an online income. I don't think that's something that all of my audience here with my Freedom Seekers channel wants to know about and hear about. And so I've created a new YouTube channel, and I need to build that up and get it optimized. and I'll be telling you about that, so that if you want to come over and subscribe to that channel as well as you can, you'll be able to do that. But so this week, I really want to get that channel, the optimization, the proper setup of it. I've already got it created, but it's not set up properly, and so I'm going through. I've got a checklist I'm following, and I'm going through that checklist to really make sure it's all done properly. And so that's going to be my third goal for this week. And let me just check then to see if there are any questions for tonight. No questions I don't see, and so I'm going to go ahead and end this then, because I know I've run late. But thank you very much for spending this time here with me, and Happy New Year. I hope you're as excited about this New Year as I am. Not because I'm excited to have had last year end. It's just that there's new things going on this year in my life, and I'm excited about all the new things going on in my life, and I hope you are too. So have a great week, and we'll be back here next Monday at 8 p.m. or sometime between 8 and 8:30. But I'm trying to keep them closer to 8. We'll see you next Monday.